Yes, as John G. Sutton. Tales from the Jail. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference that exists between the American prison system and the British prison system. As some of you may know, I recently did an interview with a man called Sean Atwood. He has a massive following on YouTube on his true crime channel. My interview will be featured on there probably later this month. And Sean Atwood did quite a number of years locked into the American prison system. I highly recommend that you read his book Hard Time, because the American prison system, it just isn't like ours. Despite the fact that the British prison system can be very brutal and at times highly degrading, it isn't in the same league as the American system. For instance, the American system will see you on reception, stripped down and bending over with anybody walking past getting a complete eyeful of your rectum. I mean, that's not exactly not going to build your self-confidence, is it? Also, the American system is based on, in the prisons itself, seems to be based on gangs. Now, I know that the British prison system is slipping that way, and it seems to be allowed to be slipping that way by the authorities who are not stepping in. Now, in America, they've formed gangs like the Mexican Americans, the Mexicans, the the Hispanics, the blacks, and the whites, and all these are little gangs inside the prisons, fighting amongst themselves, for supremacy. I don't know what it is. And they seem to have, from what Sean Atwood's book is describing and what I've seen on various television programs about this, they seem to have tattoos that mark the status of the inmate. I believe that they have little black tears. Each tear represents somebody that the inmate has murdered. I'm not sure I'd want to advertise the fact that I was a murderer myself, if I was in there, but these people seem to think so. And various other signs, they have for some reason, certain individuals seem to believe that the Nazi regime was something to be celebrated. Yeah. Not really when you think about what the Nazis actually did. They were extremely racist. I mean, they not only did they murder 6 million Jews, they annihilated gypsies, people who were handicapped, people who were mentally impaired. They destroyed people who were homosexual. And this is not something to be celebrated, I wouldn't think. It's just an insult to humanity, which is why Britain went to war in the first place. Took the Americans a little while to join in, but I believe when they did join in, they brought a great deal of weapons with them, and that kind of tilted it over the top. But I mean, you don't want my opinion on World War II, but I'll give it to you anyway. The big mistake that Hitler made was attacking Russia, because once you attack Russia, then you're in there forever, aren't you? That's what did Napoleon. Do you know the name of the general that defeated Napoleon when he attacked Russia? For 10 points, do you know it? No, you don't. I'll tell you, General Winter. Yeah, it wasn't a physical general. It was the freezing cold of the Russian winter. Because what the Russian army did was, as the Germans advanced into Russia, they deployed a scorched earth policy, so that as the Germans went forward into Russia, they had to maintain a supply line to feed the troops, because what the Russians had done is burnt everything in their path, destroyed everything, so that by the time they got into Stalingrad, they were grinding to a halt, and at the gates of Moscow, yeah, Napoleon's army had frozen to death. And that's the same thing that happened to Hitler. Same thing. Stalingrad destroyed them, with General Winter doing the damage. Anyway, little page from history there. I'm sure you were delighted with that. But the British system doesn't really have the same kind of gang segregation that the American system has, and we certainly don't feed inmates in the same manner. I know there's been a lot of talk about the prison food being inedible. No, not in Britain. I mean, I knew one of the officers, personally knew him, who used to prepare the food, and he would eat it himself. He said it was perfectly good. It might not be sirloin steaks, but the food was edible. I was working one day on A1 landing in the clinic, and the officer working with me used to raid the breakfast as it came in, so he'd help himself. And one day they put a big tray of sausages. There were 16 inmates on the landing, 16 inmates on A1 hospital landing, and they brought 16 sausages down and put them on a big tray right in front of our clinic. And my colleague went out and ate 16 sausages. He was a great big fella, I mean, I might manage one and a half, but he managed 16 sausages, and there were no sausages left for the inmates. He gobbled a lot, and of course they never said anything to the inmates like, "You've not got your sausage because he's eating it." They just ignored it. Yeah. So the food was edible, and I believe that it was quite tasty. And I never had any myself. Didn't eat it myself. I didn't eat in the canteen that they provided for the staff, because it was run by prisoners who cooked for the staff. I previously told you about the inmates. On a Friday, it was always fish, at the officers' canteen, which was outside the gates. And the inmates actually told me, because I used to talk to them, I mean, I had a laugh with them. But I said, "What's so funny about this on a Friday? Every time I see you on a Friday, you're taking the, a laugh." I said, "It's the fish, boss." Because I never had any food there. They knew that, They said, "Don't touch it." I said, "Well, why? What is the matter?" "Well, why not?" He said, "When the fish comes in, we take turns in pissing all over it, and we let it marinate until lunchtime when we fry it up." Seriously. So the inmates were pissing on the officers' fish. I suppose it's only reasonably fair, because a lot of the staff were pissing in the soup. For some reason they thought that was acceptable, I previously mentioned trying to reprimand them for doing so, and I mean, you start doing that, you get what I eventually got: physically assaulted. Yeah. I'll tell you a little story about me being physically assaulted. I was living up Cheetham Hill, and somebody used to let the dog off, and the dog would come and dig my front garden up, dig it up, like dogs do, like they're looking for a bone, and then crap all over it. Yeah. So it would be about 10:30 one night, and my wife said, "The dog's on the garden now." She'd seen it, through the window. So I went out there, and there was the dog on the garden, digging into the garden, and it subsequently crapped all over the place. And the man who was supposedly walking the dog was stood about 5 yards away. So I said to him, "Hey, you're letting your dog dig my garden up and crap all over it. So you've been doing this for some time." Gave me a right load of abuse. I said, "Listen, that's not the way to carry on, is it?" And I went up to him. I said, "Listen, that is not acceptable." And as I did so, he head-butted me in the nose. you know, which kind of squashed it a bit, you know. Didn't break it, but it squashed it a bit. So what followed, what ensued, was a kind of an interaction which involved me using one of these on his head, which he didn't like. So, having whacked a few into his snot box, I said to him, "Now don't do that again." And I turned around and walked away. Now I never do this again. Never turn your back on a jailer anyway. Because as I turned my back to walk into the house, he jumped onto my shoulders and got hold of my head. And as I fell to the floor, my ankle broke. So I'm on the floor and there's bloody pain in my ankle. He's banging my head against the floor. Eventually he stopped and I managed to get back inside, but I had to go to the hospital the following day. And subsequently they x-rayed my foot and it was the ankle was broken, you see. So I was in a plaster for about 6 weeks after that. Couldn't work for 6 weeks. I mean, what a nutter. And he was a scumbag, this jailer. Yeah, I used to see him because he lived round the corner and he used to leave the lights on in his main room. And he'd be sat at the table, still in his uniform, eating his meal with his uniform hat on his head, just stuck on the back of his head. Now, what kind of a numpty does that? I mean, you've been plodding around the filthy landings all day. You come home. I mean, the first thing you would normally do is what I used to do. Get that stuff off, have a wash, and get yourself changed into civilian clothing. Anyway, he didn't do that. I'm going to now, I've had a request here to do a very difficult song that's usually sung by somebody called Pavarotti, which you have no doubt heard. And it was done at the Queen's celebration recently for her platinum jubilee, you know, 70 years. And it's been requested, I think it was Miss Z has requested this. It's Nessun Dorma, but not as you've ever heard it before. Are you sitting comfortably? I doubt I'm going to be able to do much of this, but I'll give it a go. Must be mad. Well, I am. Nessun dorma, nessun dorma, tu pure, o principe, sia nella tua fradista nasa, goa della stella, ci tremano da amor speranza. Ma il mio misterio ci somiglia, il nome mio nessun saprà, non sola tua bocca, l'addio quando la splendere, ed mio pia san segrana, il silenzio si te fa mia. Dieligo o notea, tramato stella, alla abba vincerio, vincerio. I didn't hear any applause. Do subscribe. Tales from the Jails. This is John G. Sutton.